going. Here we go. So lucky for you, we have a lot of data to share, and it just happens to be St. Patrick's Day. I thank you all for joining us for another Lunch and Learn with the VRS data team. I'm Laura Cheney, and I'm going to get us started. We have a couple of topics to share with you today. There will be opportunities to ask questions as we go along, but also feel free to use the chat if you have any questions or comments to add. Like I mentioned, I am recording today's session for those that couldn't join us. We're going to start with a little St. Patrick's Day trivia. So on your screen, you'll see a little question. Feel free to give your answer in the chat if you're feeling like you want to do that. So legend has it that if you kiss the Blarney Stone, you will. We're getting lots of answers in the chat here. And it's pretty consistent. So, yes, gain the gift of gab. So kissing the Blarney Stone at Blarney Castle in Blarney, Ireland, that is a mouthful, gives you the gift of gab. If you give it one kiss, you can talk a lot of Blarney and people will still believe you. Did you know that you have to lie on your back and bend your head way down to even reach the stone? And when you do, you will be kissing something that has been kissed by thousands of people a year for 500 years. True or false? Services that VR staff provide to participants that aren't purchased are reported to RSA from services on the employment plan. So again, feel free to give me a true or a false or a T or an F in the chat. What do you think here? When we report to RSA about non-purchase services, are we reporting those from the employment plan? True or false? So we kind of have a mixture of answers. I'm seeing some true, I'm seeing some false. So we're going to go ahead. The answer is definitely false. Starting in July 1st of 2020, that was when program year 20 started, VRS started reporting non-purchase services through specific case note categories. Reporting from the case notes presented the least amount of new work for field staff. When we were reporting those non-purchase services from the employment plan, we were in a way over-reporting. So we're trying to avoid that. So we felt that case noting would give us a more accurate picture of those non-purchased services. And as always, data tells the story of VR. So those case notes, that's documenting the work that you're doing with those individuals and telling their story. So here's a list of the different case note categories that are reported to RSA. For the first 2 quarters of program year 20, what do you think are the top 2 most reported case note categories? And again, you can feel free to type your answers in the chat, or if you have a piece of paper, just go ahead and jot those down. But what do you think may be the top 2 most reported case note categories? So I'm seeing counseling and guidance, pre-ETs, information and referral, job placement, a lot of counseling and guidance, a lot of pre-ETs. more job placement, job search. And the winner is, the top two most reported categories happen to be counseling and guidance and pre-ETS. So you guys are like right on. Assessment, job placement, and job search case notes aren't far behind. So you can kind of see how the different case note categories fall and how many case notes for those first two quarters have been reported for each category. So here's a snapshot of what was reported to RSA for the first quarter of program year 20. And remember, that's July 1st of 2020 through September 30th of 2020. So we entered a little over 16,000 case notes for non-purchase services for more than 5,100 participants in that first quarter. And this image shows you what we reported for the second quarter. So you'll notice that our numbers are going up. In that second quarter, it was a little more than 18,000 case notes for the non-purchase services for over 5,400 participants. So a lot of work going on with those case notes, getting those entered, getting that information reported. So I wanted to kind of break it down even a little bit further for you. So each case note category has different case notes that fall into each category. So for example, counseling and guidance, anytime you select, the action plan, the annual plan review, that counseling and guidance case note category or IEP meetings, those are all kind of going into that bigger, broader counseling and guidance category. And then you can see the same is true of pre-ETS. So we have, the 5 different pre-ETS activities or services that we may be helping coordinate or arrange or provide for participants and kind of how those fall. And then the last one is assessment. So your assessment of VR needs, your intake case notes, and case notes around vocational testing. So hopefully seeing these numbers and breaking it down a little bit is helpful. Are there any questions so far about this information? And you can feel free to type your questions in the chat or unmute and go ahead and ask away. Okay. I'm going to keep moving us along. So the next thing I want to talk about are trends. So we're going to switch gears. We really need your help to make sure that non-purchase services that get reported are accurate. There needs to be statewide consistency with how categories are selected for non-purchase services. The next couple of slides are going to review some of the trends that have been identified when taking a closer look at the case notes that have been reported. So the first one is intake. So we have that intake case note category, and this category really is only meant to be used after we've received an application for VR services. So as some of the data was being reviewed, it was noticed that this case note category was sometimes being used before a VRS application had been entered in Workforce One. It's important that the intake is only selected after an application has been entered. If we're labeling things intake prior to the application, it's skewing our numbers. So remember, we have 10 days from when the participant applies for services to complete an intake. And then the next trend is kind of in regard to those placement categories. When you look at the desk aid, we break the different placement categories into internal or external. So, you know, there's job placement, the communication, things like that. So staff should be selecting the internal case note category when they are participating in a placement activity, such as the placement plan meeting, a 60-day check-in meeting, maybe you're following up with a participant about a job hire. But if you're really communicating with a provider, you know, maybe we authorized for a PBA and you're following up with the PBA provider, you're emailing them or you had a conversation, those are really external activities if they're giving you an update about what is happening. So then the next case note category that I want to go over is information and referral. We had a lot of case notes that were being categorized as information and referral, but the content of the case note actually was a copy of an email saying that we had emailed referral information to a provider. And those really they need to be categorized as correspondence. So just make sure if you're entering a case note and it's simply a copy that you emailed, you know, the referral information to a community partner, please do not use information and referral, use correspondence in that situation. The next one is counseling and guidance. So just a reminder that only counselors, rehab reps, and RAMs should be using this case note category. And then case notes need to reflect that a direct service was provided to the participant when the category indicates it's reported to RSA as a staff provided service. So if the content of the case note is an email confirming an appointment or documenting that a voicemail was left or that we sent an email, those need to be called correspondence instead of counseling and guidance. Any questions here about the trends? Okay. So now I'm going to go over a few reminders. So we do have a case note category desk aid. It's found on SharePoint in the forms section. And we really developed the desk aid because prior to July 1st of 2020, staff were told to simply do their best when they selected a case note category. Or we told them, go ahead and choose the case note category that makes sense for you, how you want to organize your case notes. Now that we're reporting non-purchase services from case notes, we really need to be intentional about the case note category that's selected. So I'm going to take a minute and I'm just going to go out to SharePoint. And in that forms section, I hope you're all still seeing my screen.
Mm-hmm.
Cool.
We are, yep.
Awesome, thank you. So forms, case note, I'm going to go to the letter C, and then my case note category desk aid is here. And I'm going to slide this over. So here it is. I don't know why it does this. Give me 1 second. I always lose this third column for some reason. So here is our case note category desk aid. And just a reminder about the desk aid, it's kind of broken into 3 sections. The far left is your case note category. So when you're looking at these case note categories, these are what's going to display in your drop-down menu when you're entering a case note. The case note categories that are in green, those are the ones that we're reporting to RSA. So those are the ones that we need to be really intentional about. When we're selecting those case note categories, we're saying that we directly provided that service to the VR participant. This middle column is a description. So it will show you, I'm going to make this a little bigger for you guys. So this will show you kind of guidance is what we've called it about why you would select that case note category. So as you kind of review the form, it'll give you little reminders about this is why you're selecting that particular case note category. And then to the far right, we call it an explanation column, but really some of the case note categories went away, like appointment or assessment. And this column at the far right will tell you what you could use in its place. So it's just there to kind of guide you if that is what you naturally would have thought to call the case note, but perhaps it no longer exists. So this is your case note category desk aid. Another thing, since I'm out on SharePoint, that I wanted to show you, if you go to Counseling and Placement Resources, there is this link for FAQ. And we have entered some FAQs specific to reporting from case notes. So when I come out to the FAQ, I can filter by topic. And you'll see one of my topics is reporting from case notes. So when I check that box, now it's showing me the questions that have been received specific to this reporting from case notes topic. So I would encourage you, if you have a question, you can always go out to SharePoint and see if the question's already been asked along with the guidance or the answer that we have provided. So again, Counseling Placement Resources, FAQ. Okay, go back to my PowerPoint. So we begin to provide non-purchase services from the moment an individual is eligible for VR services. We provide non-purchase services whether the person has an employment plan or not. Once an employment plan is developed, staff will want to ensure that the case note categories that are being reported to RSA for non-purchase services are also reflected on the employment plan. I encourage you to use that desk aid and be intentional about the case note categories that you're selecting. And then just a reminder that you have the ability when you're entering a case note to select up to 5 case note categories. So if your case note covers a bunch of different topics, you have the ability to select more than one. And as always, ongoing information will be provided to you as the data team continues to utilize case note categories to accurately reflect the services being provided by VR staff to our participants. So as I've mentioned previously, this is an ongoing process. We're going to continue to give you updates and information because we know reporting from case notes is new for all of us, something that we just started doing July of 2020. So we will continue to give you information about that. Questions? Any questions about the information that has been presented so far about reporting from case notes?
Laura, that was great. This is Carrie, and I don't see any questions in the chat box, but I just wanted to add, if you haven't done it exactly according to the rules so far, don't sweat it. Just, going forward, do your best to adhere to the desk aid and reporting from case notes so we do have it accurately. But again, no big deal if you've made a mistake in the past.
Laura, I do have a quick question. This is Becky. Where
Sure.
is this? I see that it's recorded. Where is it going to be housed? Like if there are people that couldn't come today, where can we find it?
That is a great question. And I'm not sure yet, but I will make sure to communicate that with everybody. Once I have the recording, I will make sure to let you know where it can be found going forward.
We've got another question in the chat. It says, if someone is in plan development and no plan is written yet, do the RSA categories matter for those individuals? Laura, do you want me to answer that or do you want to go for it?
I think I can go for it. So, some of the case notes that you enter in Workforce One are prior to plan, like your assessment case notes, things like that. So we know that some of those case note categories, you're not going to have an employment plan. Once a plan is developed, we're just asking that if the case note category is reportable, then that service should also be reflected on the plan. For example, pre-ETS. Once you've written a plan, you would be including those pre-ETS services on the employment plan. So then, after the plan is written, if you entered a case note for pre-ETS, that's the cross-check we're referring to. So I hope that answered the question, and I hope that makes sense.
Great, thanks, Laura.
Yeah. Okay, so if there are no other questions, we are going to switch gears again, and we are going to talk about the reports portal. So Terry Sands, he's a longtime member of VRS, and he is going to go over some new reports that are now available in the reports portal. Dun, da, da, da. So, we had to bring out the movie theater curtain for you guys. So there are two new summary reports in the reports portal. They're called the pre-ETS participants and pre-ETS referral. Maybe we have a question before we go there. I am wondering if a category can be added back in for applications. Often my tech will enter the app and I want to add information about the application or meeting after the fact. So I'm wondering, are you asking if you can add to someone else's case note?
I'll just unmute. This is
Or,
Chandra.
yep.
So yeah, so instead of typing, I'll just ask it.
Yep.
My question is, so like if my tech enters the application there, if you type case notes in the application, those will show up. But if I want to go back and add a note regarding our application meeting, or about receiving the application in general, I can't do that from case notes.
Right, because they're entering that. So on some of our screens in Workforce One, there's just that box at the bottom that allows you to enter a case note right when you're on the page in Workforce One. So that's the only time that application case note category displays. So my understanding is that if going forward, yeah, Sherry's saying use intake for that case note, or I suppose counseling and guidance would be the next best option. So I hope that helps.
Right, yeah, I understand that. It just, if you want to actually make a note about the application itself, I mean, my tech's not doing that because they aren't the one who did the application meeting. You know what I mean? Or if it was information prior to receiving the application, getting it sent out or something.
Yep. I hear what you're saying, and I will write that down and see what we can come up with. Okay. Terry, are you ready?
Yes, I'm ready.
Okay.
Thanks, Laura.
You're welcome.
That was a nice review of the case notes categories, and well, the reports I'm going to show here probably tie in a little bit with what you just described. Laura has the reports portal displaying here, and what I want to do is go to the transition folder, which is the very last one here, and there aren't very many reports on here. We're in the process. We've added 2 new ones that I'm going to talk about, and others perhaps on the way. And I'll start with the pre-ETS participant report. If you want to run that, Laura.
Mm-hmm. There you go.
And you'll notice that on some of the reports that we'll show you today, the formats are basically the same. We're at, only talking about summary information at this point, but it shows the statewide total of the, and the title of the report is pretty much self-descriptive here, the summary of participants enrolled in high school during the current program year. Again, these are only participants now we're talking about, those with an IPE. And I'm going to describe the columns here are the total number of students enrolled during the year, the number with purchased services, those that have had any authorized services for one of the 5 pre-ETS categories. So it'll show the unduplicated count of students that have received those services and the current authorized and expended amounts. The staff services is what Laura was just talking about, but this is only talking about the pre-ETS services, those 5 categories that you've case noted, and it's an accumulative report. So this is going to always be updated. It's not broken down by quarter. It's from July 1st to date. And anytime you run it, you're going to get current information out of the Workforce One database. The next to last column, the received services is an unduplicated count of those who have either received a purchase service or a staff provided service. So you'll notice that those counts are going to be slightly higher than the total of the purchased and staff. This is the unduplicated count column. And the very last one, of course, is the percent of those who are enrolled during the year and how many and what percent have actually received a pre-ETS service. So you can then the format on this, and by the way, this is only for program year 20. It will, as we go into program year 2021, it will you'll be able to pull up that information as well, but you can't go back to program year 19 or previous years. So you select, let's say, pick a region there, Laura. I don't care which one, it doesn't matter. They're all going to have the same format. So you pick Metro, and it's going to bring up the information for each team in terms of enrollments and so on. And going further, you can drill down to bring up which staff are assigned. So here she picked North St. Paul, and those are the counselors who are working with those cases, those participants. And so the information is meant to be kind of pretty high level, admittedly. We're in the process of consulting again with a pre-ETS work group and getting input from the field in terms of being able to look at the detail behind some of these numbers. And that would be an additional report or a link to another report. So there's the work in progress here. We feel that there's been a lot of focus on pre-ETS, a lot of focus on our high school population, and beyond that, what happens to the high school students once they graduate and move on. So this is a starting point basically for monitoring and keeping track of how many you see problems with these numbers, etc. By all means, let us know what if you see any issues with this. But we'll be putting out some more reports under this transition category. Maybe I should stop at this point. We have a couple other reports to go through, so maybe we could take any questions that you might have about this one in particular, and then before we move on to another report. And I don't know what silence means, Laura.
I think they're loving it,
Is
Terry.
it self-explanatory or what? I mean, I'd be happy to answer any questions. Oh, there's one. Seems pretty straightforward. Lori, thank you. Looks good. Well, beautiful. Whoa, holy cow. I didn't expect that. I was hoping for maybe some questions here. Well, then perhaps we could move on to the other report, Laura. I mean, it's going to
Okay.
be, look, the very the same, but it's going to be for the pre-ETS referrals, which of course are the students who have enrolled during the current program year for the students who are potentially eligible. They're non-applicants. And if you do open those, pick.
We'll go to the north this time.
Go to the north, okay.
Yeah.
There we go. And you'll notice that it's going to still have a drill down, to the staff, the Bemidji. Oh, it's vacant. Well, that tells you something, I guess. And there's 90, if I'm reading that correctly, it looks like 90 people enrolled. And okay, so somebody's covering that, I presume. But if you pick another one, it would probably bring up, whoever the rehab rep is for that.
Go to
team.
Duluth.
And there's Josie. Okay. Well, so that gives you the information for that other population. And we kind of are going to be tracking both populations, both our participants as well as our potentially eligible students. And we felt that keeping them separate at this point makes a lot of sense rather than trying to mix everything together. So that's the approach we've taken. I saw a question, did I, or somebody?
We're just getting more comments, Terry, about how much people like it.
Well, that's nice to hear. Thinking that there might be some questions, but if it's self-explanatory, which numbers are exciting to you and concerning to me? I guess I don't, okay. How will this information be, I presume, used, right? Or I don't know. I think it's kind of a way of keeping track, perhaps, of this. Again, it will show those that have had actually pre-ETS staff provided services, and that seems to be, in general, a higher number. I'll look at this in here. It's about split, isn't it? The purchase services and well, that's odd. I guess that would be interesting to me. The number of people that have had purchase services is about equal to the number who have received services provided by the staff. Well, that's quite interesting, I thought. And the unduplicated count, the 774, is a combination of both. So. And another observation, perhaps, is that the percent who have actually received the services are lower, generally speaking, than those in the participant group. I think that was more like 80-some%, 82 or something, I can't recall. And this has been running a little bit lower. And there's a good variation across the state. But that's another thing that you could take a look at and see if that's about right, or you want to question about, the data that's in your caseload or in your team. By all means, let us know any concerns or questions you might have.
So Terry, there is a question.
Mm-hmm.
What dollar amount for pre-ETS gets reported to RSA? The authorized amount or the expended amount?
The expended amount. The expended amount is the thing that RSA, in terms of dollars, they're more concerned, and it's reported on a quarterly basis, so that each quarter we'll look at in each of the reportable categories that we have, or we actually are authorizing for expenditures, and that could cover training and all the other categories beyond pre-ETS, of course. And it's reported on how many dollars actually get expended during that particular reporting quarter. So it accumulates, and we're kind of looking at both authorized and expended only as a kind of monitoring tool of what really counts as expended. That answers the question, I hope.
I think so.
Okay. I think we could go on. We have a couple other things we want to touch on. We're not going to go through all of the issues around, go back to the transition folder if you
Oh,
would.
You're right. I
But
forgot.
yeah,
for a
I
second.
just want to talk about that very last report, students still attending high school. If you want to run that, just to kind of remind people, that was developed for deployment on the portal, but it's been quite a while since a new report very similar to this in terms of format, but giving you the same data is now and has been available in Workforce One. It's called the high school. Let's see, where is it? Remind me, students still attending high school. The Workforce One report, if you go to the reports tab in Workforce One, you would scroll down to a report called High School Students Detail. And it will give you the same information, plus it will also include students who are enrolled in PREET's referral status. So it includes more data than what we have here, and we would like to remove this particular report from the transition folder only because we don't want it in both places. We're directing you and encouraging you to go to the Workforce One report if you're interested in getting this this kind of detail. So we're not going to show it now. You can do that on your own, but just go to that reports tab sometime in Workforce One and look at the high school students detail report, and you'll see the same information. You'll be able to select by team and even by counselor if you want. So it'll be virtually the same report. And so just to give you a heads up that we'll send out a message when we actually remove it from the portal and direct you to the correct report to use. That's all I have on this one. And of course, the past graduation dates, that's just a monitoring tool. I think we'll keep that on the portal. Currently, there's only 16 records on here, which is very, very good. And I know there's been a lot of encouragement to get that, to always kind of watch this particular report, because it'll show those that are indicated as still attending high school, but their graduation date or the estimated date has passed. So, so having only 16 on there is really good news. Okay, we
Right.
can move on. Yeah, I think it
Yep,
is.
so
At one time we
it
had a couple hundred, and
yes,
what happens in the spring is often they might graduate in May or June, and they forget to go back into the record and update the graduation status. So if they actually graduated, we want you to indicate that that's the status that has been updated. And so this will grow presumably as we get later in the spring, but keep an eye on
Right.
it anyway.
yep.
There is
So
no
if,
report like this in Workforce One. So this is the one you would want to look at.
right, so if you run this report and you see that your caseload has records on there, we just ask that you go to the education and training page, and either if the person has graduated or is no longer enrolled in high school, then you would update that education and training page to say they either graduated or dropped out. Otherwise, if they're still in high school, but they haven't yet graduated, then you would be pushing out that estimated graduation date. So that's kind of how you clean this up and get them off of the report.
Okay, Laura, do you want to go to the caseload management? We only have this one more report, but we thought it was important to mention in this session. Looks like
This one,
there's a
right?
bunch of questions coming in. I don't know if you want to pause here for a
Um,
moment and take.
I think they've been taken care of.
We do have a question in the chat.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
What if they are moving to a transition program in the next school year and have their diploma held?
My understanding is that they're still considered in high school, like they're still participating in that transition program. So you would extend the estimated graduation date until they've
Right.
actually completed the program.
I agree, Laura.
I agree.
Okay, thank you. This is Kim. I asked the question. That helps a lot. And then I think what I usually do is at the beginning of the school year, then I just switch the school from where
Yep,
they were attending to the new transition program. Is that
exactly.
okay?
Yep,
Yep. Great. Thank you, guys.
you're welcome.
Now, okay, does that take care of some of the questions that for now? And
I
you
think
could,
so, Terry.
let's touch on that last one.
Yep.
Oh, here it is. Again, this is all data that pertains to program year 2020. And this maybe kind of looks similar in some respects, but keep in mind, this is primarily for taking a look at the number of measurable skill gains that have been entered for students who have been enrolled in an education or training program. So again, this goes beyond just the high school students. This includes post-secondary as well. And again, I'm hoping that columns are somewhat self-explanatory. This will look at the total number of enrollees. And this, again, pertains only to participants. Maybe I should have a note on this report, but the measurable skill gains are only recorded for participants or reported to RSA for those who have an IPE. But total there being at the current point is 3,741. And if you look at the 5 different MSGs that have been reported, and then the students with MSGs is an unduplicated count across all of the 5 different MSG categories. So you can't add up the 5 and get the total students. That unduplicated count will be somewhat less than the sum of the 5. And then the percent of enrolled, again, is reflecting back to how many students got an MSG so far this year. Again, it's a cumulative report. And it's simply the division of students with MSGs divided by number of students enrolled. If you want to just for this, drill down into this, it'll look kind of similar in some respects. We're highlighting teams in blue, and you can drill down to the counselor and do that one on one of them, say Apple Valley. You notice I didn't bring down the percent of enrolled for each counselor because the numbers get rather small when you start breaking it down this way in terms of the number of MSG being reported. Realizing, of course, that there's probably a lot of reasons why we're, running behind last year's pace. I think we ended up last year with about 50% of MSGs being reported, and we're running well behind that pace. But again, lots of reasons I won't go into. I think we all understand, perhaps why we're going to have a lower count this year, but hopefully things pick up next year. So was there something else, Laura, here I was going to mention? This has nothing to do, again, with case notes or anything. It's just simply reported MSGs. And it also includes both secondary and post-secondary enrollment. So I'm kind of thinking that maybe we should have a parameter on, being able to choose just high school enrollments or post-secondary. That would be probably a better, nicer way to break some of this down. But this is the way the report stands currently. And I just wanted to make sure you understood, what the numbers reflect here. So do you think it needs more explanation on the report so people don't get confused about it? Or is it, again, I'm hoping it's somewhat self-explanatory, but enrollments get a little confusing at times.
I think it's great. I think, we've been having a lot of messaging and training recently specific to MSGs. So this is just a nice report for staff to be able to reference and see, on your team or in your caseload, how many participants do you have that are enrolled on the education and training page? And then how many MSGs have been reported for this program year? So it's just another case management tool to kind of give you a quick snapshot of how it looks for this program year.
And one way to verify these numbers, for example, would be to, again, go to Workforce One under the Reports tab and look up the detail report called Education and Training Enrollment Detail. Education and Training Enrollment Detail Report. That will give you the detail. I mean, it'll list all of the students currently enrolled in an education program for any given counselor or team, and it'll show the MSGs that have been reported. That should match these summary numbers. And we're finding slight differences that we're trying to get corrected, but for the most part, that report in Workforce One will give you the detail behind these summary numbers. So we didn't want to duplicate that in the portal, and that's why you think about the portal as being a kind of companion summary level oversight type of reporting mechanisms that you can go to Workforce One for any of your caseload detail information. That's the direction we're going with the reporting, and I think it's probably going to work out pretty good. So if you see any differences, major differences, whatever, if the numbers don't at all agree, please let us know, because we're trying to get these numbers to match exactly with the report in Workforce One.
Okay, so there was a question in the chat. Are students in transition programs included in this count? They do not get grades. They are included if they're enrolled on the education and training page. So on the education and training page, if we're saying that they are a high school student, they're gonna show up on this report as being enrolled, even though they might not get grades. Terry, I think we covered the reports portal, right?
Well, yeah, the ones we wanted to cover at this point. I think
Okay.
there'll be more to come.
Awesome.
From time to time.
Yes. Any
And you
other questions for Terry or comments about the reports portal? I'll just share, Alyssa did share in the chat that transition programs are supposed to give grades. If the transition program does not give grades, you can still report an MSG if the school reports that the student passed and is able to move on to the next year of transition programming. Upload the transcript and case note that the school verified to you that the student passed. Thank you, Alyssa, for that. I don't know that we have, I'm not seeing anyone unmuting or any other, there's another thing that came up. Need more clarification on information and a referral. What are some examples where I can use that category? That is a great question, Steve. We are continuing to get guidance from RSA about that case note category. So when I have more information or details about that, I will share that with you. I just want to remind you that if the content of your case note is about sending referral information to a community partner, that's not what information and referral is. I know there were also some case notes that were reviewed where it really was kind of the first meeting or giving the person information about our VR program. That wouldn't necessarily fit there either. So I am going to work on getting more information about that case note category. So I really want to thank everybody for joining us today. If you have any comments or ideas for future Lunch and Learn sessions, please feel free to contact a data team member. There's another comment in the chat. When sending out an eligibility letter, do you use correspondence or eligibility? You would use correspondence. If it's simply a copy of the eligibility letter, that is correspondence. Thanks, everybody.